Thanks everyone, and thanks for coming to our presentation this afternoon. So I hope there'll be something here you can take away with you. So as William said, we're going just speaking about continuous improvement, what that environment would look like, or what a culture of continuous improvement would look like. So like the quote here from Mark Twain, we're not seeking perfection. We just want to look around us. Are there little areas that we could nudge forward, identify this is a little project here that we could make better? And most important, the team that's with us, our management team and the players, that we can devolve some empowerment onto them, get them to engage, bring forward ideas and put in place a process that we can collate suggestions for improvement and how we can progress them forward. As I said, we're not going to bring on 100 improvement projects, but maybe there's 5 or 6 little things that we could bring on at the same time together. So it's most important when you come to these conferences, you're not going to leave with a bucket full of answers, but it's important that you take away a few questions as well, that maybe you could start chasing up new knowledge yourself or go seek out a few avenues. So hopefully there's a few little things here we're going to talk about. This culture I've mentioned, communication is critical. We have a really interesting and informative case study from abha to see what it's like from the player's eye and the perspective of the feedback two-way with the coach. And then maybe at the end, we'll go through a few little strategies or case studies that you can bring back to your own clubs or to your own teams as well yourself. Just a small bit about myself. I work in the global construction sector, primarily in the pharmaceutical construction. It's all about quality there, so you have to be continuously improving, and this is what drives my job, shall we say, as we go every day. Just a slide here on the global construction sector. This is the output per worker over the last 20-25 years. You can see construction at the bottom there in red, the way it's not improving itself year on year, whereas other sectors there like manufacturing and production on top, they've got better by putting in place lean processes, continuous improvement. They are constantly looking to get better. So this is the motivation for my work and the opportunity that exists to close the gap. So we can bring this context back to the club setup as well, or to your own coaching. What are other coaches doing that's making them successful? What are other clubs doing as well? Maybe you could pick something out of there to measure, benchmark yourself against them, and maybe take on a little improvement project as well. So this is just to set the context as to where the crossover is. My own GAA experience, I'm over 12 years a juvenile coach in my own club. In 2012 there, just really out of a bit of passion, I took on a research project there, 57 games, championship games, senior level county league games in Kerry GAA. And that gave me a body of knowledge that I was able to bring forward then into, I've been with various clubs there, won a county championship there in Kerry and lost a county final. But most interesting there the past 2 years with senior inter-county team as well. So meeting great people, great management teams, and just learning from people and players as well as we go forward, right? So we're talking about continuous improvement, maybe within the club structure, your own coaching structure. It's not about the elite players we're talking about here. We're talking about all through the group. And it's important. The elite need to be brought on as well, as we know, but so does everybody else. And that's one of the challenges for coaches and coaching groups, is how to bring everybody on and to be able to hand off particular age groups to the next age group, or you could be handing over to minor level or under 20 or into your junior, your intermediate, or your club setup as well. So it's important to bear that in mind. So regarding the culture that we're talking about here, a definition there, you're trying to improve every aspect of performance every day at every level. So like I said at the start, we can't get hung up with 100 different improvement projects, but it's important to identify what is valuable that takes us to the next step. So it's really important that you instill this mindset in yourself and in your coaching team, and also, as we see later, that you bring this out to the players as well, because a lot of the most recent successful teams, a lot of this is coming from the players that gets the margin to get you over the line at the end of it, and we'll see a little bit of that later as well. So it's a mindset and a vision as to what you see when you look around you, okay? So again, with coach development, whatever, it's all about the people. You can have all the investment in astro pitches or gyms or apps or technology, but at the end of the day, it's how the coach and the management team relate to the players, engage with the players. So the big point about this here is the softer skills and the social skills for how you engage, how you communicate, respect, all of these. So if you can get that around yourself and around your management team and bring the players in with it as well. So this slide here, this triangle there, is representing the club structure, or it could be your juvenile board structure as well. Most important that we have leadership at the top, and we need to understand what their definition of performance or success is. We need to realise there's only one team at the end of the year can win the cup. So that can't be the outright definition of success. There are other measurements that we can put in place as regards engagement and membership and retaining as well. So down at the very bottom, the most important foundation of any club and of the GAA is the participation, the players and the club members that we can get involved there. and most important in this as well is the actual retention. Are we keeping our membership year on year? Are people staying involved in the games? So there are all improvement projects that exist within these areas as well. But what we're interested here today as regards a coaching conference is the coach's role and that development role that's in it. And you can see where it is laid out there within the centre of the triangle. It's a pivotal role that's played there because you're deploying the strategy from the leadership group that's on top of the club or of your juvenile board structure, and you need to devolve that down to the players. You're also taking the players' feedback back up as well. And there's multiple roles in that as well. I'm not going to go through every point here, but the coach becomes a leader, the coach is a manager, the coach is a follower, and the coach is a doer. You need to be able to multitask with all of this and know when is right to or when not to do it. We spoke about behaviours. They are highlighted, engaging people and empowering people, not just players, but also your own management team, that you're conscious of what gaps exist within the management team and that you can develop them as well to be better assistant coaches to yourself or if they're specialising in particular roles. So we're trying to create a more rounded coach, more rounded assistants that you as a management team can progress further within your own club or wherever you're going to as well. We see their communication and a feedback-driven culture. And we'll get a good example there from Ava when she speaks about how that works in a real-life situation from player feedback and coach feedback as well. Benchmarking is important. I mentioned that. What are others doing? Are we keeping eyes open to see what's successful for other clubs? We mightn't be able to emulate everything if we don't have the player base, but from a developmental point of view, we can definitely strive for that as well. And like I said there with our own management team, if some elements of your management team, if there are knowledge gaps, there is plenty of literature or conferences available there that maybe we could focus in on that. Or you might need to get an outside expert in for some of your coaches. So just with continuous improvement, you're always nudging ahead with change. Sometimes it's big change, sometimes it's small change. But people are very fearful of change, especially groups of people. And over 90% of implementations in business actually fail. But all I'm showing here is that we should be aware there is knowledge out there and go seek it. This is just one reference point that's there, and these are 8 steps to implementing change. It needn't be too scientific or too complicated. Bring it back to our own level where we're working. Currently, I'm on a project with a team. We're at the bottom step here, creating the climate for change, and we're just about to communicate this vision to the player group. So really interesting, and it does work, and it gives you a standard to work off as well. So maybe just be mindful of that. I know I'm going through a bit quickly. There's a lot to cover, so if you can take away a few angles, have a look at it. A story about this guy here. He was the Australian cricket coach in 1999. Before 1999, Australia had a good cricket team, but they weren't getting over the line. They hadn't won anything. In this guy's reign in the noughties, there is still a record that isn't matched. 16 consecutive test wins, 3 consecutive World Cups. And all he did was he empowered the players to sort it out. What's the missing margin that's not getting us over the line? Come to me with the answers. We'll collate it. We will put in place a strategy. And you can nearly compare this to the successful teams that are appearing out here every September in LGFA. You have Dublin and Cork over the past 8 or 10 years. You know, you have Dublin and Kerry and Mayo, maybe in the men's football, Tipperary and Kilkenny in hurling. Others come now and again, but what are the teams that are constantly repeating it? And what is that little margin that's getting them there repeatedly? Is it the bit that's coming from within the players, this empowerment? So maybe just have a think on that, of what it's about, okay? We speak again about change there and nudging ahead, little improvements. We heard Keith speaking about this morning. You know, the analogy here is you're nearly pushing a car up a hill. When you get it up a little bit, you have to put the handbrake on, sustain the change. Because you've got to remember, if you slide down to the bottom of the green area there, you're back into safety, you're back into a comfort zone where people can be relaxed and nobody's going to see you down there. It's easy to hide in your sessions, it's easy to hide in your games, you're not making progress. The successful guys are going to try and stick their head up here and start moving along with it. And especially if you look at the bottom line here, these are literally words that Jordan Henderson from Liverpool has said over Christmas. The improved way becomes the standard. The players themselves are driving the standard. They set a new standard and they want to go again. So the whole thing here is bringing it back to the player group and being able to set up that environment. Okay, so just to summarise what I've said there, we're speaking about enabling the players to be the best they can be and to set up this environment. Improvement projects might be around participation, development, performance. That's what the coach's role is all about. Okay, so I'm just going to step a little bit sideways now, maybe into the shoes of the performance analyst, and I'm looking at the coach or the coach's team in this environment here. And most importantly, the coach and ultimately the players are going to be the customer of the information that I'm going to generate or the data. So it's most important to know what the coach actually wants, what's going on inside his head regarding his style of play. There's no point in just churning out stats or figures unless they're actually going to be of value to what the coach is going to do in his team, or in the way he's going to set up his play or to make improvements for the next game. So you need to decipher that. What exactly does the coach want to need? Obviously, they need confirmation of what his own gut instinct is telling themselves. I believe there's research that says only 30 to 40% of what happens on the pitch is actually recalled by the coach. So you want to ensure they have the best information to make an informed decision. You're highlighting advanced risk as well. If there's a change made or a switch made in defence, you want to make sure that that process is stabilised, and you're going to monitor that maybe for the next 10-15 minutes in a game. On the longer term, you want to get consistency through a game, through maybe 15 minutes phases from half to half over a number of games, and ultimately over a season or over a league campaign. We want to develop from game to game. So this is a relationship between the analyst, the coach, the management team, and obviously information going to the players, okay? All around everything I've said is communication, and this leads into Ava's presentation as well, the importance of how you communicate, what you communicate, and when you communicate as well, okay? So just gathering the information is a critical point, but the message that you're given, is it understood by the coach, the management team, and then how the coach gives it to the players? Is that understood as well? We'll have a look at how much information is circulating around. There is so much there. It's important to cut out the noise, shall we say, and get straight to the stuff that is valuable, okay? And similarly, have we created this environment where if a player is unsure of it, can they raise their hand? Can they seek clarification? And that's the feedback that we're going to talk about. We have it there at the bottom, this feedback loop or cycle that Ava is going to get further into as well. This is just a graphic. There is so much happening and the players are at the middle. They can't absorb everything, so we need to filter out what is valuable and how do we define that. Okay, so this is a little project in itself. There's just so much happening there, but it's important as well that we have that two-way feedback. You have this Plan, Do, Check Act, or it's also called Plan, Do, Review Act, that if you're implementing something or giving information, that you have a way of reviewing, is it actually working? What way is the feedback? And then we can progress with that project if that's what we're doing, or we might need to readjust or recalibrate, okay? Last slide here now before we go to Ava, and we're not going through everything, but just be aware, everybody in the room here is unique. There are different personalities. If we were all working as a group, we would all have to get on with each other. Just two examples, if you want to look at it, Myers-Briggs there on the left, Sea Change, Enneagram on the right. We all fall into one particular type of personality here. They say opposites attract. Sometimes people can work better, more times heads are going to clash. So just be aware of the type of personalities in your group and also how that communication. There are some people it's easier to give feedback and it's more challenging with others, or you may have to give it in a different way. So Ava will take her case study from here.
So hi everyone, my name is abha Rutledge and I'm a player on the Dublin senior panel. I began my senior journey in 2014 when I progressed from the minor team that summer up to the senior team. I played a full year in 2015 where I made my league debut. 2016-17 I didn't play in the setup. I took a year off and I went on my J1 and I returned then to setup in 2018 where I got a call from Mick Bohan, my manager at the time, and he said, would I be interested in coming back into setup for 2018? And I was a bit nervous, but I was absolutely thrilled. Being out of it for 2 years, it meant like I had a Crawford again. And I was delighted to get asked to go back in. So the management team had kind of set up a pre-season for players like myself who were going back into setup and players who new faces. It kind of let us familiarise ourselves with the terminology that was used, with the setup, and to kind of get a bit of strength work in the gym. So come January, when the rest of the panel returned, we weren't falling behind straight away. We were kind of up there with them. So 2018, I was playing with my college as well. Started a few of the league matches. And as competition got higher in 2018, when everyone came back, I didn't put my hand up as much as I should have. I kind of fell back behind, lost a bit of confidence. So I started a few matches in the league, came on the league semi-final, and then with that, the competition, I fell behind. I didn't see much championship football in 2018, which meant that my confidence was quite low. I, in my head, felt I wasn't fit enough. I wasn't good enough in the ball. I didn't think I'd be able to go on again and play. So early 2019, January, the week we went back training, I gave Mick a call before he went, and I just said, look, I don't think I'm able for it. I don't have a graw for it this year. I'm going to take a step back. I'm not going to play. And I suppose Mick just thought maybe I was making a drastic decision the week we were back training and just said, look, take a week, think about it. He said, you can't just give it one go. It doesn't take 1 year to break into an inter-county team. It's a 2-year cycle at this stage. And he kind of referenced other players that have been there 2 or 3 years. And he said, look at them now. Look how they're getting more game time and they're improving. And in 2018, I learned so much from my coaches. So over that week where I was given a period just to think, I just thought, why would I give up on something after giving it one chance? This is something I've always wanted to do. So I decided then, I called him back a week later and I decided to play in 2019. So I suppose this is the beginning of my journey. So had Mick not said that to me, other managers might have just said, all right, Grant, off you go. So he played a big part in that and keeping me there. And I suppose when he gave me the confidence that he wanted me there as well, it was nice to know. So went into the league 2019 and I possibly wasn't putting my hand up enough or taking my chances. Didn't get too much game time at the beginning, so I began to keep a diary. And this made me feel like I was writing down after training if I thought I did well, if I thought I did bad, or how I prepared for training or my matches, if I played a match and didn't do well, like why didn't I? Look back at my prep. And luckily enough then in February we filled out these feedback forms, so it meant I could write everything I had in my diary down on a sheet and give it to my coach. So we wrote down our weaknesses, our strengths, and how we could improve on our weaknesses. So every manager, every coach was given a group of players to kind of go through their forms with them, and Mick went through mine with me, and he gave it to me after this training session where he thought I'd done quite well. So I've always been a forward, played in my club, Crokes, in college the odd time maybe as a defender, but I was primarily a forward. And in that one training session I played as a back because we were doing backs and forwards, and he thought, Joe, you did quite well, I'm happy to be giving it to you on today when you've done quite well in training, and kind of gave me that self-motivation to kind of push on. But a few weeks later we had a one-to-one and he just said, look, it doesn't seem to me that you want to be here. Myself and the management team have decided that we have to make a drop at the end of the league and you haven't shown us that you want to be here. You're kind of just going through the motions. So this upset me. I was like, God, of course I want to be here. Like, do you know, when someone really takes something away from you, you want to fight that bit harder. So the following 2 weeks in training, I gave him my all. I worked as hard as I could. And I kind of said to Mick, well, maybe if it's not working as a forward, maybe I could try as a defender. And this in my head was just crazy because I'd always been a forward. So 2 weeks later, we played against Cork and I started as corner back. And a few of my friends and stuff were like, is this serious? Like, are you actually playing as a corner back? Like, so I was extremely nervous, especially with meshes coming in like that. But anyway, I was sitting on the bus on the way down and I was going through, you know, the last 2 weeks I've been training as a defender, but I was kind of working my footwork and I was talking to my friend on the bus beside me and I was like, God, like I'm so stressed, like I don't know what's going to happen here. And she's like, just relax, whatever, it's fine. And one of our defence coaches, Pablo, he brought me up to the top of the bus and he just said, look, there's no pressure, there's no need to be nervous here. Like, you've only trained as a defender for 2 weeks. Do you know, like, no one's expecting big things from you here. He said, just go out, express yourself and enjoy it. So I suppose then that gave me it was such a good word of advice. I went out, I rediscovered my confidence, I just expressed myself. We ended up losing the match against Cork in the end, but for me it was such a big goal that to start a match, to play the full match was something I hadn't done in such a long time for Dublin. And although I was upset that we'd lost, I was just so happy with myself. So my enjoyment for the game came back, and it meant then for the rest of the summer I was training as a defender. I was working on little things with the coaches. So they had kind of pulled me aside and we did video analysis based off different games where my footwork was wrong and if I got turned, so we kind of worked on that. We had players running at me and I had to adjust my footwork, or my tackling was so bad. I suppose the forward, if you're tackling and you're throwing your hands in up the 14-metre line the other end, it doesn't really make a difference, they get a free, but if you make a bad tackle on the 14 line to score down the other end. So it was the simple things. I had to go back, I had to revisit and work on the coaches, their constant encouragement. Even the players, some of the forwards were telling me, like, you know, if you push people this way, and it was just the simple things I had to get right. But there was this culture was created whereby there was such a positive from like the players, the coaches, where you could call them anytime. Before matches sometimes I'd give Mick a call and just I'd be a bit nervous. But it was just that culture that was created whereby the coaches were so happy to give feedback. So for me, the coaches' feedback, encouragement and interaction were what got me from not wanting to play for my county to being Dublin Player of the Year in 2019. I'll hand you back over to Willie now.
Very interesting story there, and we can see where some of it will feed back into what we went beforehand and maybe going forward as well. So most important there was the decisions that were made from Ava's side and also from her coach's side. So the importance there of the observation and the data that's been fed towards a coach. We see keywords there like informing decision making. Observation and measurement is needed to improve. So if we're trying to implement an improvement process, we need to either have some form of a baseline or some way of measuring, is the improvement positive, is it going forward, or are there other issues that are being identified and we need to track as well. Just going into a few case studies here, maybe something might resonate, you could bring it back to your own club, maybe not. These very basic sort of stuff. Just to explain what it is here, these numbers here should say our own kickouts, 18 kickouts gone down to this side of midfield, 17 down the middle, 18 to this side. 8 kickouts last year, 9 last year, 10 last year. So just to give you an idea of what that starting point is. So we have some data here after a block of 7 league games. We've totted it all up together, so we have some information where our kickouts are going. Okay, we've a stat here of 35% of the long kickouts lost. So is this a problem or not? Okay, it might be a problem if you knew that the last 2 games had been lost by a point. Okay, and we want to chase down. I've said that maybe a little too early. So we got to check out, go further into the information and see what's on there. Okay, so 27 kickouts lost, bit more information. 5 of them were clean, 22 of that were breaking ball. Okay, go a bit deeper. No score was conceded from the ones that were lost clean. 112 conceded from breaking ball. So this is where the line is. If the last 2 games had been lost by a point, is there an impact in when you're looking for that little margin? What would have made the difference? So we're going to try and seek a bit more information on that. And this is just maybe an exercise you could conduct on a single game. Where are the kickouts going? What's the result of it? Very simple now, guy beside you on a sheet of paper, kick out taken, possession lost, it's shoveled back, it's gone into the corner, it's gone over the bar, okay? This is just one. If we repeat that, put the kick out to a different place again, what do we change here? Do you go short with your kick out? You're the coaches. Or if that's pressed on you and you're stopped, what do you do next? So with this information, straight away, the cornerback is probably in risk here if the coach makes a rush decision. But what is happening further out, or can we get this information across? Is there something that we could intervene with further out the pitch? The fact that possession is being shoveled back into the opposition's half all the time to set up a move to come into probably a key corner forward inside in that player. So just be aware, don't always go for the obvious thing. Okay, the short kick out might bail you out earlier. The end result is that corner forward has got 3 scores out of it. Is there something else happening further out that you have? There are obviously players being unmarked in the other half of the pitch that are able to set up a score. Just have this mindset of what else is happening, okay? Something similar here, forward possession. Again, what the squares of the numbers are, shall we say 7 scores from this corner, 33 from here, 6 wides from here, 1 from there, 4 from there. Again, over a block of 7 league games, we've collated all the information together. If we're preparing for championship, what can we do with this data? We dig a little deeper into it. Over half the scores have come from that sweet zone there inside the D and outside the D. So over half the zones have come from that scores from that area, and the other half then has come from the rest. So if we just go by that, it doesn't look like there's a problem that wherever we kick from, we're getting a score. There doesn't seem to be a problem there. But if we focus in on the wides, we see 1 in 3 of the wides being kicked from this zone, whereas almost 70% of the wides are being kicked from outside of that area. So straight away we have a risk here with the amount of possession that's being kicked wide from outside there. So some data there for a coach or a management team to focus into, and what more can they get. Maybe you could dig a little deeper, 73% there from that zone, 67% from there, 63% from there. So maybe that's information to hand over to a coach and see what they want to do about maybe progressing the ball in there or trying to get better opportunities rather than taking high-risk kicks from outside. I know it's pretty basic stuff at the higher level, but maybe a lot of this could be brought back to, shall we say, junior clubs or to maybe some of your older juvenile teams as well, and just have a look at what's going on. Something simple here, we see a lot of guys talking about opposition possessions and whatever, but what's actually happening with it? This is a very simple Excel sheet that's just been printed out and maybe given to a young fella that's with you beside you on the sideline. Just to go through some of these, A is an assist, what I would define as maybe the previous 2 passes to a score, 1 a free, a point from a free, a point, a goal, A is last possession. So if you take an example like this and you're trying to give some information to a coach at halftime, straight away you're drawn into player 10 has had 14 possessions. So is somebody going to rush and tell the coach that, or is it telling him anything? I think you should go a little deeper. I know it might be difficult for some to see. We'll try and explain it. What is the value of the possessions that that particular player have? So if we go a little deeper, we see the full forward line here, that they have scored 1-6 from the full forward line. Out of the 111 we have conceded in total. So surely something else is happening out the pitch that's feeding that amount of possession into the full forward line. Maybe there's an intervention to be made out there. You can see where the scorers are coming from. A score there from midfield and 2 from the defence. Maybe something else is happening further out the field as well. But probably the key points to give the coach is player 11 and player 15 have both had 4 assists and have both scored 3 points. So maybe something needs to be channeled in along there. That's more valuable information than the first thing we see there with the guy that has the most possessions. So maybe just have a think about it, a few bits like that. Another one here, this is where the forwards coach sat down, looked at 3 games and picked out the dead ball, what was happening from it. This again relates back to the games, 2 games that were lost by a single point. Okay, he made a few notes here, 67% success from frees, and came up with the conclusion that it looks like every free is being scoreable, that the players are making up their mind, they're going to have a go here. 50% success from 45s, player 3 from the right kicks with the outside of the boot and they both go wide. Player 2 has 55% success. Is player 2 better from the hands? He's had no miss from the hands, and we need to decide when to go short or when is the right time, and are players 1 and 4 better options from the right? So what was done with this information is that the coach, the forwards coach, called in the 4 players in question. This text wasn't here. The sheet was given to the floor, 4 players on a Tuesday night. They were sent off and said, guys, sort it out, come back to me with an answer as to what we're going to do about this. So the players met themselves, and the obvious thing was we need to decide who is best placed or in the best position to take a kick from a particular position, or when do we realise that we're outside of our zone and at least we get a second chance to see can we work it into a scoring zone. The drill that the coach put in place at the time was just the 5 different coloured cones that he had outside, shall we say, the 30-metre line. The players decide themselves, they might take them from the left or right or whatever, or the area, and you're actually tracking and measuring who is most accurate from what different position, and at what stage do we run out of room that, look, I'm not comfortable taking it, or my conversion rate isn't good enough outside this. They're all very simple. You could even work them with your minor teams or your under 16 teams or something like that. So just to close out, just a few references. We've spoken there, this growth mindset. It means, do you want to be constantly looking to find an opportunity to make things better? Or do you have a fixed mindset? You're going to stand still while everybody else is just passing you out because they're taking on these improvements. That's the difference. So that's a book there by Carol Dweck. It might be interesting. We've spoken there about change. Cotter is a good reference. There are some single-page handouts there on, if you Google it. This guy Emiliani about the softer skills, how you actually relate to people and how you get people to engage with you and how you empower them. And I referenced there the cricket coach, this winning culture leadership. It's actually a bestseller for business leaders around the world. And I know there's probably thousands of other books there as well. But they're just things that I found interesting. So, and just to close out, I suppose most importantly, don't stand still. Keep moving in whatever you're doing. Keep looking at what others are doing. Can you take something out of it? But most importantly, empower your management team and your players just to have a look at what they're doing. Is there something better I'm doing that I can do, or am I making the same mistakes? Just to be aware of what's going on around you. Okay, thank you.